Hey everybody, welcome to another interview at 101 Art School. We are interviewing today Atey Ghailan. Atey, say hello to everybody.
Hey everyone.
Awesome. Before we begin, I think for you guys who don't know Atey, his artwork is pretty famous on the internet. I know personally, when I've been working in-house and passing on work to artists, I've referenced your work all the time because it's just so cool. And it's just so many great ideas and beautiful colors, and there's just a lot of variety to your work as well. So before we even begin with any of that cool stuff, I want you guys to go check out his work. I'll probably put a link in the description. But first of all, let's start out with where do you come from originally? Because I know you're in Sweden right now.
Yeah, thanks for the kind words. I was born in Iran, but my parents are from Iraq. And we moved to Sweden when I was pretty much a year old. So lived pretty much all my life in Sweden until I sort of became an adult around 22. That's when I started like working in the industry and I started moving around more. But now I'm back in Sweden again.
Okay. So speaking of which, what got you started into this whole journey?
For me, it's like, I think with most people, it's like you just find out that drawing is actually fun. And then somewhere along the line, because I was actually going to go into field of law. And it was really, really not my thing. But I noticed, because I was taking classes in university, and I started doodling during the classes. It's like, it's actually more entertaining than the law the law course. And then it's like, you go from there. It's like, all right, I like the act of drawing. How do I get better at it? And once you die, it's like a rabbit hole, right? The more you keep digging, it's like, oh, is there profession linked to this? And then you find out, like, there's fine artists, there's illustrators, there's like game artists, and from there it's like I sort of found found my trail, basically.
Okay, so like, man, that reminds me of when I was sketching in high school, just like during classes, I'd be like, the teacher would be yapping on and I'd be like, and I'd be drawing some Dragon Ball Z character, like whatever, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome, dude. So speaking of education, like for art, like what did you do? Did you have a formal education or did you just kind of wing it? Like what did you do?
So this was back in 2000, I think 10 when I started drawing, because it took me about 2 years before I got my first job. And if you think back, like, the entertainment industry is still super young.
Yeah.
There was no Gumroads. There was definitely like
Mm-hmm.
no online options. Unlike now, there's so much to choose from.
Yeah.
And for me back then, like the only thing I sort of knew of was like Art Center, which if you're not from US, it's a pretty hefty price you have to pay.
Yeah.
You
In
know,
Pasadena.
yeah. You from what I've seen, most students become super good, but it's like to go into that kind of depth was not something I was ready for. And then you had FCD, which also was a pretty hefty price, but you
Yeah.
saw all these really talented people graduate from that school.
Yeah. And that came later.
So yeah, yeah. And so my thing was like, all right, I have zero money. Let's look at the free options. And I applied to, I think, 4 or 5 different art schools in Sweden, but I got rejected from all of them. So I sort of, just took it upon myself to try and see what I could do on my own.
Yeah, dude. I mean, they're lost. At the end of the day, like I can't believe it. You must have been really bad. Do you have any of your old artwork with you at the moment?
I do. I
Oh my
do.
God. Can we take a look? Is that allowed?
Yeah. I actually don't have the absolute oldest, but I have like, it's like, I think when you sort of get to a certain threshold in your career, when you're just about to get into the industry,
Yeah.
that's the kind of work I have. Should I screen share?
Yeah, go for it. I gave you
Uh,
permission.
okay, so let's do this. Can you see this?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this was when was this? So this must have been like 2011, I think. It says even on the images, 2012. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And this was like, let me pull this piece over. So, because I didn't have really an education on my own, it's
Yeah.
like I was just trying everything. I was
Yeah.
watching some back then there was very few tutorials, and you'd watch them over and over again. And I watched this tutorial where they talked about perspective. I was like, huh, that sounds like that would make things so much easier, you know,
Oh
if you
my
try
God,
to think
really?
of things in perspective.
Dude, I'm
Uh,
dying over here because this is, how early is this? Is this like one of your first pieces?
so this was when I started trying to make perspective work, you know.
Really?
So this was pretty early, I would say, year one or year two
But
in
dude, your
in
lighting
my
is
journey.
so good already. Like it grosses me out. Come on.
It was heavy photo texture, you know. So it's like I still think at this stage I had, you know, if you start breaking it down, there's so much stuff that's broken with this image. But it was like the main thing is like, perspective helps your images look better, and it's like you
Mm,
don't have to struggle to make it look, because you know when the perspective is wrong and you don't understand perspective, it's like, why does this image look wonky?
yeah,
What's not working with it?
yeah,
So this was like a pretty big breakthrough where I started implementing that in my pieces.
amazing.
I actually have here as well my first art test that uh, I never got paid for, or they never got back to me on. So
Oh, it's
uh,
great. I love it.
basically, this was like, I think they're called like you know, those games where you click around on the
Yeah,
images.
it's like a mystery, solve a mystery type game, or yeah, it's like point and
Yeah,
click. Yeah, with like a
yeah,
rail.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they provided me with a sketch, and they basically said like just render it up over the course of, I think like it was 2 days or something.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so I tried to render it as much as I could. You know, this was like to me, this was like the big chance to make it big, and trying to draw for a living. So
Yeah.
I think I haven't posted this one either online. So it
Ooh,
was kind of
magic.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, exclusive for this.
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. Do you think you'll ever revisit?
Oh no, no. This will not see the light of day. But it was fun, you know. Even though you know it kind of sucked that they never got back to me, I got to practice something differently, you know, and I
Yeah.
had fun with it.
It's a rich set. I like it.
Yeah, I think the drawing was pretty cool. You know, I got to add a bunch of other stuff, but they sort of figured out the general layout, which made it a bit easier for the image.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I have. So I'm trying to think. This was some environment speed painting, and this was literally, I think, on the brink when I got my first gig, when I was getting my first gig.
Okay.
So if you look at the quality of this, and this is like 2012, I think. Uh, if you compare it to what you need to do now compared to then, it's like very different, right? It's like almost
Hmm.
night and day. Uh, but back then, you know, like you'd see speed paint videos, and I think that's the main thing with like maybe younger artists is like you see someone do something, and it looks maybe very effortless, and they make it look cool. So I watched a lot of Zeus YouTube videos,
Yeah.
uh, and they make it look so cool with so little effort. I was like, I bet it's super easy. You just slap in a bunch of things, you just do a bunch of brush strokes, but it's takes a lot a lot of time and energy to
Yeah.
make it look good.
Yeah. And I mean, that's experimental stuff that you're doing there to kind of figure out a whole new way of producing images.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like I have no idea how to do it, so it's like just gotta try and fail. And I think that's like super important. Like if you're starting out, it's just, you know, don't be afraid to try things, and don't feel like you have to stick in a set way of approaching things. Just have fun
Yeah.
with it, right?
Yeah. I love
Uh,
that. I love that.
and this was like also just on the brink, you know. I think I had either I just completed my art test, or I was about to do my first art test for studio, or second art test.
Hmm.
And this was like, yeah, I always love animation. I think it looks so cool.
Yeah.
Um, and I still do, you know.
Yeah.
I don't draw much in the typical anime style, but I just love it. It's just fantastic. The draftsmanship behind the
Hmm.
character, the gestures, and the environments, it's just so beautiful.
It's so
Uh,
careful. That's what I love
yeah,
about it.
yeah, and it's, to me, it never gets dated, you know, and I
Hmm.
just really like it. So, you know, back then I kind of wanted to try and like, if I tried to draw anime, what would it look like, you know?
Yeah.
So just for fun.
Yeah. No, I love it. I can see your more recent work already sort of in this a little bit, like a little bit of this, the flavors coming through.
Yep. Uh, then we have this piece. I don't remember what this was for. I
This
think
was your
this was
first
just
splash, right?
yeah, maybe it was.
Is this pre-League of Legends?
Yeah, this must have been like super early. I don't remember. I think at the time I saw something with a lot of cool VFX and glow effects, and I was like, "Damn, I want to do that too."
Yeah,
Uh, but it was pretty messy, the shapes.
but experimental,
Uh,
which is good.
yeah. And this is where like I feel like I'm starting to understand things a bit more, like a bit about values, a bit about color. Still pretty muddy, right? But
Yeah,
the image starts to make a bit more sense.
yeah. It's got a lovely
And
watercolor feel to it, actually, especially near
yeah,
the back. That's rad.
yeah. And when I started my career, I played a lot with textures. I really enjoyed it.
Hmm.
Nowadays, I barely use it. It's just
Mm,
personal preference, but
mm.
it was super fun to create these pieces.
Yeah, and already starting to work in complex design here and some
Yeah.
ideation. Yeah, very cool.
Then I don't remember what this was for. Some tattoo design. I think this might have been because I used to go for because I got my internship at a commercial agency. I was like what do you call it? Office person, office manager,
Hmm.
where you know the goal at the agency was like to get a feel of what is it like to work in the commercial industry. uh, you know, my interest was like mostly related to drawing, but I got a feel for like what does it look like if you work in with ads and stuff like that in graphic design. It really wasn't for me, but it was a cool way of getting a feel for things. I just gotta let the cat
Yeah.
out. And I always used to go for figure drawing after work once
Hmm.
a week. And I used to, before the figure drawing, I used to eat at this kebab place.
Hmm.
And the owner was like, "Could you draw me a tattoo?" Uh, and I did it, and he hated it. So that
No.
was that was that.
To be fair,
Uh,
if you're gonna scar your body forever,
yeah, yeah,
better
it
be the
has to
best.
be. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And then I just have some uh, vehicle and character designs.
Yeah. Were you
I
at all influenced by KK work?
Yeah,
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 that kind of is definitely looking like it here.
yeah. I think back then, if you think about timelines, like back then, like his work was so far ahead of so many artists.
Yeah.
It feels like if you go back in time and look at people who are making, now there's so many people making fantastic work, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
back then it was, you could almost count them on your hands who could do great entertainment work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Engaging, different.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like the old Massive Black Crew. Do you remember them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have their book above me here, volume 1 of Ballistic. It's amazing.
Dude, they were so far ahead of everyone else, in my opinion. Like in terms of like entertainment and like
Yeah.
setting up a pipeline of like more than individual freelancer and stuff like that. And they also had like super cool artists I used to look at. So that was
Yeah, of
really
course.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, I still look at that stuff today because it's still awesome. Like it just holds
Yeah,
up. It's so
yeah,
strong.
yeah. I think that was it from the older work that I had.
All right. All right. So let's jump back if
Cool.
you wouldn't mind. Yeah, there
Yeah.
we go. All right. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your work in general around kind of the stuff I've been consuming, which is like your YouTube channel. And I watched a bunch of your videos and I have been kind of getting a sense of who you are as an artist and as a person. And what I noticed was that you seem to have a lot of passion for narrative in your images. So could you go into a little bit about that? Like what started that whole concept of like putting a story behind the image, and then kind of help us break down like how do you research something like that?
Yeah. So this was like when I think it was 2012 when I got my first job as a concept artist at an outsource studio.
Hmm.
And I remember feeling, like I was going through the motion each day, but I felt like I wasn't pushing myself enough. And we go back to Massive Black again, I love their work, and they had a workshop. I this was like I think the one before the last, where they had it in San Francisco. I think it was 2012 or 2013.
Okay.
So I flew out there, and the main thing that I wanted was portfolio reviews.
Yeah.
I was super excited for the demos. There was so many amazing artists, but I really wanted portfolio reviews. That's basically why I was paying for the whole trip.
Yeah, dude, I did the same thing. Quite
Yeah,
literally. To San Francisco.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of money, especially when you're starting out. But I think if you get the person to give you the right feedback, I think it can really, really help. And meeting new artist friends and stuff like that. Especially if you're like outgoing. So I went to this workshop and I waited for feedback. I remember that day there was a specific person I wanted feedback from. There was two of them, and I waited in line, I think, for 6 hours. And then when I finally came up, it was my turn. One of the guys, he was eating a hot dog. I don't want to say who the artist was.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah, he was eating a hot dog. He was looking at my portfolio. He's like, I've seen all this before, and that's pretty much all he gave me.
Yeah. Wow.
But the other person, felt great after 6 hours.
Yeah, it's like, oh yes, wash me with your scorn.
But the other person really took the time to look through it and look at it, and he said, there's really like no storytelling or love in the images. And at that time, I was working as professionally, but all the work I did was very like surface level, just trying to make it pretty much look cool. Storytelling for me back then was like character fighting, character in the foreground, something exploding, right? I think that's like it is a form of storytelling, but it's very shallow storytelling. And that's sort of like, at that time I was like, right, okay, I need to do more storytelling, but I didn't really understand what he meant. I thought I did, but I didn't. And I think this is like, for a lot of feedback, is how it actually is sometimes when someone tells you something, you might not be ready to digest it or really understand the meaning behind it. It might take time. I think for me, it took maybe like 2 years before, because I kept coming back to it. It was always in the back of my head, like, how do I add more storytelling to my pieces? And I kept like thinking about it as I kept working. I kept trying pieces, and I decided to, since I wasn't making any big progress on it, I still felt like I was doing pieces that was like shallow level storytelling. So I was like, all right, this is something that needs full attention.
Right.
So I decided for a full year to do a painting every single day.
Yeah.
And every single day I had to have this. The main focus of the image was the story aspect.
Yeah.
So every day I was like hammering at it. It's like, what kind of story am I going to do today? Over the course of the year, many of them were like shallow level because you just get exhausted. But it really forced me to think about it every day and really like question of like, how do you push the storytelling aspect? And that was like a huge boost of like a whole year of trying to understand it. I don't think I fully understand it yet, but definitely better than when I started it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was basically like the start of trying to get better at storytelling.
Well, I think
spent the whole year.
If I'm not mistaken, that entire project was something you kind of published online, right? Yeah. I mean, like this is, if you guys don't know this, like go look this up, because this project inspired, I think, just about everybody I know. Like just about everybody I know was looking at this and going like, this is so cool. Like how can someone do piece after piece that's this consistent and this interesting and this, and it's because you had a reason, right, inside you that you put this out into the world. And I think there must have been some pretty awesome like shockwaves that happened as a result of that, within yourself, and of course like what was coming at you after that. So dude, that is super, super cool. So you've done quite a lot in your career. I've kind of stalked you all over LinkedIn and like
Okay.
the Facebooks and all the places I can just dig and get my nails into, just to kind of find out a little bit more about you. Because, you know, a lot of the time I chat to people overseas who I haven't met before. You know, we met just before this meeting briefly, and that's about it. But you know, there's such a connection between artists around the world. We just don't know what it is until we actually connect. So I wanted to ask you, do you see any new trends that are influencing the way we work in the industry today?
Uh, you mean like in terms of commercial work or just art in general?
I mean, the approach to working for people or art in general, maybe even you know, some of the stuff you guys have been doing in studio, like how you approach a brief. Like, has any of that changed since when you started, or has it been pretty much the same?
I think they sort of become more of a culture around making, um, less about making for clients and more for an audience. For instance, if you want to build
Right,
up like a following,
right.
I'd say that's probably like the biggest difference because if you go back a few years, that was like never even a consideration. It's
Yeah,
like you just gotta level up your work to work at the studio. That is it.
absolutely, absolutely.
uh,
Yeah,
but now it's like, hey, I can build up pretty big following. I can do my Patreon, right? And I don't need to
right,
work for a studio.
right.
I think that is super, super cool that there is that path. You know, NFT is also one more thing. I know there's a lot of opinions on that,
Hmm.
but that is also like an avenue where you don't have to do it for someone else. You just do your thing and you put it up for sale.
Yeah, I wonder if artists are starting to become decentralized.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
because this I was chatting to Malcolm a little bit about this in our interview, but it's been on my mind ever since. And Malcolm's like a master at this, which is branding, personal branding. And I think it's like you mentioned, you know, on Instagram, it's something that's blowing up right now. And it, like you said, it empowers artists. It's a hard road to go down because there's a lot of content creation that has to go behind it, and like authentic passion and like really putting yourself out there, which is not
Yeah.
always easy for us, but it's definitely very powerful. So imagine we take away like all the art, we strip it away from your entire existence, your entire being, everything. I want to know, like, who are you without that stuff? Like, what fires you up right now that isn't art related?
Ooh. Um,
And if you've been too busy to even notice, then that's cool too.
I so what I would do if I wasn't drawing for a living?
Well, not
Or
really. I guess like most people know the artist. Like I look at your work and I think that's you, right? But I know it's
yeah,
not you, right? I know that you're a
yeah.
really cool dude that's like super friendly and like cares for people and all this amazing stuff. Like right now, like if you think about something in the world, like is there anything like do you have like I don't know, some kind of outside passion like sailing or something that we don't know about?
Okay. Um, well, I kind of really, really enjoy whenever we buy something new for a cat to play with. That
Yeah.
is that is like it is so fun to see his reaction. Like we recently got like soap bubbles, and it's like it's just because we have our balcony and we just sit there and just blow soap bubbles at him, and he loves it. And but I don't know if that's what you're thinking.
Dude, that is
Uh,
hilarious. You know
it's kind
that
of fun.
that is going to be have to be one of your next paintings, I think, a cat with soap bubbles,
Okay.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, dude. The cat is he doesn't care for work hours or anything. He's like, it's time to play now.
Yeah,
If you don't
exactly.
want to play, I will tear on all the furniture until you play.
Exactly. And
So
it's like if you're in an important interview like this one, like my cat will just be sitting on my head, like, dude, what's up? Like he doesn't
yeah,
give a shit.
yeah. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Cool. So you've traveled quite a bit for work, obviously to the States, to work with Riot and other companies and stuff like that. Have you found a particular place that you love to live in, or is it kind of different in each place and you appreciate it for that?
I think it's different in each place, and it's like also at what stage you are in life.
Hmm.
When I moved to LA with my partner, it was just the two of us, and it was great. Like, uh, you there's so much to see, so much to do.
Hmm.
But we started a family, we have a kid this year, and it's like,
Amazing. Congratulations.
thanks. For that, it's like I prefer Sweden over States.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say everywhere. I lived in UK, Croatia, and US,
Hmm.
and I would say each one is kind of nice for their own thing. It just depends where you are in life. Like Croatia is super cheap, right? If
Really?
you,
Hmm.
yeah, like average salary is probably like around 700, 800 USD, and you live a full life off of that, you know. So if you earn a salary outside of the country, right? For like if you work as an artist, you earn definitely more than that.
Yeah,
Uh, you can live at a different standard, which is kind of cool.
completely. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I would say US was amazing for the time period we were there, but like for family, Sweden is really great.
Yeah, I mean the amount of like leave you guys get and work hours during the day, it's unparalleled. So
Yeah.
we're going to jump into some tastiness right now, which is, if
Okay.
you guys don't know this, for the last year, Atey's been pretty busy starting his own studio in Stockholm, Sweden. So let me get this straight. Have you like on a personal level, you're not working in the industry, but now you're working in your personal capacity for the industry within your own studio. So can you walk us through like what made you decide to start this whole thing?
Uh, so I think that COVID made a lot of people think about things differently.
Yeah.
In many different fields, many different jobs, titles. And for us, you know, because like LA, if you just, for me, it's like I'm not a local, right? Uh, and we were just sitting at home. You don't get to, because when you can see this, I think also this is a thing where I think for COVID, a lot of people had a time to reflect on things
Hmm.
because when things are normal, it's so easy to just get caught up in everything that's happening. You know, like you got to
Right.
do this, you got to do this, but it's like when there's like someone slams the brake and the rhythm is broken, and you're like, wait, what is happening? Is this what I want? You know,
Exactly.
and with you know with COVID, you know, like we're there for like LA was pretty bad as well for this. US as a whole, I would say.
Yeah, pretty
Um,
tough.
Yeah, it made me rethink things, you know, like all my family's in Sweden, and we're also planning on having kids, you know. I
Hmm.
didn't want to have in US, especially with the situation going on,
Yeah.
and want to be closer to family. My parents are pretty old as well, so especially with
Yeah.
COVID stuff,
Yeah.
um, I just wanted to move back, you know.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, at the time, uh, Riot did not allow you to work remotely. So I was like, okay, I time to do something different, right?
Right.
And I wanted to build a studio that has a few core principles that are super important to me and
Hmm.
everybody who works here. It's I've talked to everybody. This is what we all believe in, and I think is a really exciting vision, you know. And for our studios, like one of the things I believe in is that to make the absolute best working environment on the planet, you know,
Ooh.
where everybody, yeah, it's I think for most people it's like, what the fuck, you know, but it's like it is super important. I think especially for the games industry, there's a lot of practices and things that could be a lot better.
Yeah.
And I want to build a studio and culture where everybody just have a fucking great time while making the best fucking work there's ever been, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like we want everybody to be. I would hope that it would like within 3 years from now, everybody who works with us can say like, this is the best place I've worked. You know,
Yeah.
doesn't mean we'll be done, right? It's just like,
Hmm.
all right, we're heading in a good direction. But it's like a lifelong journey. And then it's like, I want to make the best fucking art there is. You know, I
Hmm.
don't want to just be another outsourced studio doing art for games. I want us to really push the bar in terms of what it means to make like fucking sick commercial work. You know,
Right. Right.
and that doesn't mean crunching, right? Because that would go
Hmm.
against the first pillar of making the
Yeah.
best working environment, right?
We're not having fun anymore.
Yeah, yeah. So those are like the two things that I set out when building the studio with, and I announced it the same day I left Riot. You know, we spent some time putting up the website and everything, and officially got our first client. We got a lot of interest in the start, and I
Hmm.
hired two artists who's still with us today, and my first producer who's also still with us. And we sort of got rolling. I think it was 16th of November last year, pretty much. So
Wow, amazing, man.
almost a full year. Yeah.
Yeah, almost a well, yeah, no, definitely. So I have so many questions around this. Like you've kind of answered a bunch of them because I was going to ask you what the company culture is kind of going to be like or what it is currently,
Yeah.
which you have alluded to here, which is great. But I do want to ask you, this is something I have always thought about on my own end, which is I really appreciated the idea of a studio being run primarily by artists. And the reason is because I noticed when back in the day when I was studying in college, I was really obsessed with golden age animation. And in particular, I was quite obsessed with Disney and Warner Brothers. And what I noticed is both of those studios were artist driven. And I thought to myself, that's a great place to be, but is it practical? Because you just mentioned you guys been hiring producers and all kinds of stuff. So from your end, is it like, do you think you have to have some people in the business side of things in order to free you guys up to be as creative as possible? And how do you kind of manage that? You know, having the I don't want, it's almost like the executive input that you get in some companies versus like the artistic freedom, right? That's quite hard to balance.
Yeah, I think that's where like sometimes companies falls apart, because when you don't understand that creative pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you should be making creative decisions. It's so disconnected from the two. And that's where like I think, I've seen a lot of things. I really understand a good pipeline,
Yeah.
especially like when we talk to clients, I can very easily say no, not doable.
Right.
We're not gonna this is not gonna work,
Yeah.
And I think if someone who maybe didn't have that experience probably wouldn't know why it's not doable, and I can also
Exactly.
explain.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been super, super meticulous about the people we brought on board. So I like for instance, our recruiter. Alex is a fantastic guy, but he's also a creative person himself. Our producer also is a super creative person himself, So everybody who we brought on board has creative knowledge or interest. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, everybody understands what's going on.
Right. Right. That
Yeah.
might be the bar really for
Yeah.
the future,
Yeah.
right? Is really you have to have some kind of spark of creativity within you to be here. You know, that sounds awesome. I love that idea. I
Yeah.
never thought about it that way. I love it. It's great. So
Yeah.
we're talking about an absolute crazy amount of artists out there who I think have been following your work. And I really want to just come out and say it, emulating your style. I see it all the time. I personally know great artists who I work with who are very close to what you do in terms of the way you approach paintings and the kind of brushstrokes and brushes you use, all kinds of stuff like that, So I wanted to ask you, so everybody who's young and aspiring artists and maybe even some mid-level guys, they're kind of obsessed with this idea of like finding their voice in their work. And that might be style, but it might just be something else, like a spark. Do you have any views on this subject?
Yeah. I've heard a lot of, I thought a lot about this thing because it also popped up when I was starting out. And
Mm-hmm.
whenever I got done presentation, people always ask this specific question about what should my style be?
Exactly.
And I think, I can only speak from my point of view and the things I've seen, but I think every person out there has a very specific way of, moving their hand, thinking about shapes and forms, with stronger skill set, it'll look better, but there'll always be that red line of your own flavor of things,
Yeah.
and uh, the more you draw and paint, the more that voice becomes, you're going to see it across several pieces, you're going to see it in different mediums as well. And I wouldn't worry so much like if you're young and you're starting out, like take inspiration from anyone you like, just,
Mm-hmm.
reference whatever you want. Uh, but over time, like try to just trust that your own voice is going to be the one that people will be drawn towards, because everybody has an amazing way of interpreting shapes and form. It's just how do you bring it out? And the only way I've found to bring it out is just by grinding a lot, which each piece is sort of like revealing the mask of your true artist self. Does,
Yeah,
does that make
absolutely.
sense?
Yeah, you're like
Uh,
peeling it away. Totally.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, you go, you go.
All right. Well, I wanted to ask you, since you've now embarked on this endeavor of starting a whole business and building up the studio, like what were some of the challenges that you guys ran into that you did not see coming?
Oh, uh, There was so many. What can
Taxes.
that was one of the easier ones there.
Okay.
um, yeah, I mean, it's like,
Was talent easy? Getting talent in Sweden?
no, like we have one person full time. We have two full time in Sweden, and we're getting our project manager in February.
Hmm.
Uh, so most of our team is outside of Sweden, you know. Man, one of the hardest things. There's so much to
What
some stuff
about,
I can't.
I gotta say,
Some
like
stuff I
for
can't say.
me, for me, one of the hardest things has been long-term vision.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's really hard to figure out like what is this gonna be, like
Mhm.
ultimately, at least, or at least in the next like 5 years. What do we want to do?
Yeah.
Right. That becomes like such a difficult way to see it.
Yeah. I think for that, I have a pretty clear of where I want us to go. I
Hmm.
think probably one of the things that we failed the hardest with, or I failed the hardest with, is, um, sometimes you finding the right person, but also making sure that they are able to do the craft itself, because I noticed, as I went through so many artists, like looking through portfolios and stuff before we
Hmm.
decide to talk to
Hmm.
someone.
Hmm.
And sometimes the portfolio looks great, you're like, shit, this person's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But it's very, very different of doing art in your free time and the process you use in your free time versus like a commercial setting.
Yeah.
That's like night and day, because in a commercial setting it's like there's a specific brief, there's a specific time frame. You have to show updates more regularly, even if the picture looks ugly, you have to show it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And working in feedback, because when you do your own work, it's like you don't have to work in any feedback, you just do your own thing. And that's been like the hardest thing, is like, how do we make sure our team members can, potential new hires, can work within that framework,
Hmm.
and make sure that we don't have to like, end the collaborations too early. So we simply started doing like paid tests, based
Yeah.
on the artist day rate. We just, based on the skill sets and stuff, we put together a brief that's kind of close to the project itself, so it's not like a
Hmm.
random brief.
That's awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because I think then you literally get like, is this the right person for this right project? Because
Yeah.
sometimes someone might be incredible, but just a specific project just doesn't click.
Yeah.
So putting together a test, based off of the inspiration from the project, uh, and you pay them for the time for the test. If it's
Right.
2-day test, you pay for 2 days. I also hate unpaid tests, by the way. I don't know
Yeah.
if,
No, no,
if
we all do.
yeah, 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 yeah. It's that's also one thing where it's like, if it's a small thing, but if we believe in building the best work culture, we should treat everybody like as good as we can. And I think someone doing work should definitely not be free.
Yeah,
So
of course, especially if it's at a high level. I mean, come on, like
yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
yeah,
That's super interesting. And are you working remotely with most people at the moment?
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
so most
yeah,
different countries. Yeah,
yeah. We are, most of our team is remote, but we actually going to sign the lease for our office next week.
congrats.
And we're gonna be thanks. We searched a lot to find the right one. We need to do some renovating, but it'll be great. And we hope to get our first group of artists over for a visit to Stockholm, probably in end of March next year.
Excellent.
Uh,
For
you
my
know,
birthday, I love it.
yeah, yeah, that's why they're here.
Exactly.
No, but I
You're
think it's
welcome.
important for them. We have cake and everything. No,
Yeah, damn right. Send me screenshots.
uh, but it's important, like for them to see Stockholm before we ask them to move,
Yeah.
because they have to like it.
Yeah,
So
of course. Yeah, you have to like Scandinavia. It is its
yeah,
own vibe completely.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not for everyone. I love it, but it's not for everybody.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to say, like when you took some of your early jobs, like way
Yeah.
back in the day, let's rewind all the way back to young you, and you were
Okay.
taking your first jobs and you were hustling in the industry and you were just up and coming. Did you ever have long-term vision of what your career might look like, or did you just go purely by gut and kind of brute force?
Um, I think sort of like I've always thought of like it as it. I think it's super super important to have a clear goal. And I think as you get older and as you progress, the goal will change. But
Hmm.
having a goal has been super important, you know. Uh, and early on, you know, like my ultimate goal is like I'm gonna make a living off of drawing. That's it. You know, I don't care what I'm drawing, right? It doesn't matter what it is, as long as I can do that, you know. And
Yeah.
once I achieved that, it's like next goal became like I want to only work on projects I like, you know.
Yeah, exactly. For
And
people
then
that
what?
aren't horrifying.
Yeah, you know, like when you start out, you know, you take what you can get, right? There's not much like
I want to not live in a box.
yeah, yeah. So it was once I was able to achieve that, it's like, okay, I want to be great at the thing I can do. You know, like I really like this project and I want to be excellent at it, you know, and
Yeah,
then, you know, like so
snowballing it. Yeah,
yeah.
I love it. Okay. So, like, dude, looking at your work, like the thing for me that stands out, like almost above everything else, is just like the sick color palettes that you have in your paintings. They're just like I could
Thank
literally
you.
take a painting, sample out the colors, and use it for another painting. And I think you do that for yourself, right? I've seen you a couple of times where you'll just like resample one of your paintings into another painting. And I wanted to ask you, like, how did you develop this color sense?
I remember like I don't remember when this was, but I particularly, especially like people work in animation,
Hmm.
there's always like Nathan Folks is like a really good example of like he has
Hmm.
such an amazing way at looking at colors, you know. And when I was looking at his work, like I was like, how is this guy so good at colors? You know, this
Hmm.
just like there has to be some different approach to what he's doing compared to what I'm doing, you know. Uh, and the thing I noticed that was pretty consistent with people working in animation who have they just have a different way of looking at colors. They do a lot of outdoor painting. That was like the thing I
Mm.
found consistent between all of them.
Yep.
Whether it's digital, traditional, doesn't really matter, you know.
Yep.
But they all do a lot of outdoor painting. I was like, oh, okay, that's something. I guess you could call it the secret, right?
Right.
To get stronger with colors, because I think uh, if you paint from outdoors, like you start to see like what would natural colors be in an image, you know,
Yeah.
and get a feel for a more unified palette, you know, and help balance it out. Because I think that's also a tricky part when making images is like, it's not just about like, you know, slapping in colors on an image. It's like, how does it all tie together into one big vision?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, it's like color has so much mood behind it. You know,
Yeah.
the green scenes that you paint are always tranquil. Like it's almost difficult to break away from. You know, to
Yeah.
like to get away from the emotions that certain colors evoke. Like I sometimes see it in like your images. Like there was the sky teaser that you did with the fox, and like I felt like that was starting to push that whole thing of like this isn't a normal situation. You know, which I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
liked. Yeah, man, it's yeah, you're right with the animation thing. A buddy of mine who paints quite similarly to you, we had him as our lead environment artist on a film, and he also does an incredible amount of life drawing and painting outside and plein air, you know, and I think that really helped him, and he pushes it on everyone else. He's like, hey, come join
Yeah.
me outside, let's go do this. And like
Yeah.
you can see the clear benefit like almost weekly from these artists who join him. So yeah, there's definitely something to it. So if you guys are listening at home, go paint outside.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I would I
yeah,
would
go for
actually
it.
just to add to that, I would
Mhm.
recommend traditional media over digital, because I
Yeah.
think part of the traditional, like sure, it's a bit more clumsy, but with digital, like you can undo and fix things so fast that sometimes you don't quite think about it. But when you work traditionally, it's like you make a mistake, you're gonna pay for it. So you're
Oh
gonna think
yeah.
extra hard
Yep.
before you pick that color or you lay down that
Yeah.
brushstroke.
I hope you're willing to wait now.
Yeah, yeah. So I think there is you have to pay more attention and absorb more information, which I think why I would propose traditional if someone goes outside painting.
Yeah, and it probably speeds you up because you're working
Yeah,
so much more immediately that when you go back to digital, it's like, oh, I have a complete understanding what color I'm going to sample right now.
yeah, yeah.
Totally. So, based on your own experience, do you have any recommended advice for artists who want to break into this industry and maybe come work for you someday? Maybe some general portfolio tips. I mean, you've looked at a ton of them by now. What would you say?
I would say the primary thing is really fundamentals. You know,
Hmm.
like if you can draw really well and sculpt the shapes and form really well, whether it's environment or character, it's like that is perfect. You know, because that's where it's it tends to fall apart where, especially in our studio, like we really want to elevate pieces, you know. It's not so much about, we want to remove the fact that trying to make it look right versus like make it look great, you know. And to make it look great, you have to be able to draw at a basic level, and that's really really important. I think especially as students, like not just for us, any studio, like if you can just focus on learning how to draw accurately, you know, the
Hmm.
light, the forms, the shapes, you know, with schools or, you know, whatever it is, like maybe you're a 3-year one-on-one mentorship, but whatever it is, like learn that. It's going to make everything that much easier.
Absolutely. And I think the reason that is true is because you're taking the guessing game out of it, right? You're not hitting
Yeah.
any walls
Yeah.
as you're producing the art. So it's kind of like the confidence level is all the way up as much as possible on that early stage of, you know, developing an image. And then after that, it's all the juice that you just keep
Yeah.
piling on, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So that concludes our interview today. That's about it, guys. Please check out Atey's work. If you haven't, it's absolutely insane. I'm going to put links down in the description to his Artstation, all these other juicy places. Go check out his studio as well. It is a year old. It's a cute little baby right now. I look forward to catching back up with you someday when it's a teenager. And then we can talk
Yes.
about your unruly teenager years.
Okay.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much. And I'll check you later.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye.
See ya. Bye.